Imagine having a personal net worth of $26 billion, only to have it go to zero in a day. You go from being called JP Morgan to the Bernie Madoff of crypto in under a week. Next thing you know, the Royal Bahamas police would like to have a word with you. But that can happen to you. Your face is plastered everywhere. Forbes, billboards, street corners, everywhere. And you're not even 30 years old. You're in your prime, baby. You're living with your 9 roommates who all work for you, and you're all super smart, into Adderall and some other substances, and you're all tied up in some really questionable polyamorous relationships. This is the story of Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF for short, the vegan fraudster and effective altruist who ended up getting 25 years in prison. Many folks know the gist of this story, but when you dig deeper, it gets really insane. Let's look at just how crazy things get. He couldn't have been born into a better family. Born in 1992 into an upper middle class Jewish family in the Stanford bubble, both his parents were professors at Stanford Law School. His aunt also happened to be the first female dean of Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health. That's not an actual mailman school, like a school for mailmen. It's Columbia's health school, which is a big deal. His brother Gabriel was also a Wall Street trader, and the family's super well connected in the Democratic Party circles. From there, our boy SBF attended Canada-USA Math Camp in high school, which is a summer program for exceptionally gifted math students. Then he graduated at MIT, majoring in physics with a minor in math. Now that's privilege. And the kid was a genius showing some serious potential. You gotta give him that. While at MIT, SBF landed an internship at Jane Street, a trading firm where he was trading ETFs. But here's where things get interesting. He also works briefly at the Center for Effective Altruism, a philosophy that champions donating half your paycheck to altruistic causes. And that's where we meet Tara McAulay, an Australian pharmacist who is also working at the Center for Effective Altruism. She's what you might call a true believer and a sharp cookie. Quick example, she used to work at a burger joint when she helped figure out how to cut costs by 30%. That's a big deal. 30% is a huge piece of the pie. Then the burger bosses were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they sent her to other franchise locations that were at risk of failing. And she did it again and again. She basically saved all these franchises. And guess what? She was only 15 years old. I don't know about you, but I was not saving franchise locations at 15. Eventually, she was directing operations at the center, and that's when SBF came in, and he became her biggest donor. He also persuaded her to leave her job and co-launch Alameda Research with him. They raised $170 million, and from a tiny Berkeley apartment, they were making up to $500,000 a day. But that didn't last long. With gross mismanagement and basically no oversight, they seemed to have misplaced $4 million in XRP tokens. They just couldn't find it anywhere. Where could it have gone? And when the staff wanted to tell investors, SBF insisted that they shouldn't. And that's when Tara started to see him as the manipulator and liar that he is. That's also when SBF wanted to start testing this bot, one that could take up arbitrage opportunities in different countries, like buying Bitcoin for cheaper in Japan and selling it in Korea, for example, where the price would be higher, thereby taking advantage of the price differences. The problem was that this bot could not differentiate between a high-value asset like Bitcoin and a low-value asset like Diarrhea Coin. So Tara felt uneasy about this, but she ultimately gave in, telling SBF, look, man, you monitor this with one other individual when you're running it, and it should be okay. And with that, SBF turned it on and he went to sleep within the hour of launching the bot. At this point, the managers tried to force SBF out. They tried to get him to leave with a buyout, but it turned out that SBF had registered himself as Alameda's sole owner, which forced Tara to leave, and she went on to launch Lantern Ventures, which is basically what Alameda Research had always promised to do, so good for her. 2 years later, SBF would launch FTX, He marketed the crypto exchange as for traders by traders. It was slick, fast, and stacked with the most popular altcoins and leverage trading. FTX's marketing was actually insane. For example, FTX bought the naming rights to the Miami Heat Arena and it renamed it to FTX Arena for $135 million. It was also meant to pay Miami Heat $2 million every year, but that deal is obviously dead now. FTX also sponsored a Mercedes F1 team with ties to Major League Baseball, and it even got celebrities like Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, and even Larry David for the Super Bowl ads. SBF was suddenly everywhere. The New York Times was talking about him. He even made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. He was really leaning hard into the stereotype of this idiot savant who just couldn't stop making money no matter how much he tried. He even donated millions to politicians, flooding Washington with lobbyists. And he testified several times in front of Congress, claiming that he wanted to promote how to regulate crypto responsibly, which in hindsight is hilarious. He even brought on one Ryan Miller as FTX US General Counsel, who years earlier had served as legal counsel for none other than Gary Gensler, the former SEC chair. This was when Gary Gensler ran the CFTC, though, which is the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. And wouldn't you know it, SBF eventually scored a closed-door meeting with Gary, pitching a new crypto exchange plan. Before we get to the court stuff, I feel like it's important to cover the Bahamas to show you how these FTC execs were operating on a daily basis. The NY Post called it the FTX Party House. The penthouse valued at $40 million. The penthouse boasted 6 bedrooms, 2 elevators, manicured grounds, a golf course, and a boat basin packed with super yachts. The group pulled all-nighters while high on amphetamines, allegedly. Eventually, a CoinDesk article claimed that Alameda's balance sheet was largely made up of FTT, FTX's official token, which showed that there was actually no liquidity. That's when people realized, wait, Alameda is leveraged on a token that FTX created, and FTX is holding customer deposits? And just a few days later, CZ of Binance dropped a banger of a tweet. We're liquidating on FTT. This isn't just because of CZ's clout that this was important. Binance was actually holding $580 million of FTT tokens. Obviously, FTT holders at this point rushed to sell their bags. Everyone was trying to withdraw their funds, and it amounted to $6 billion in just 72 hours. And of course, FTT couldn't meet the withdrawals. Why? Because it turns out that the user funds had already been siphoned to Alameda. And that's when SBF panicked and he reached out to CZ directly and he said, hey, you want to buy FTX? After which, Binance signed a non-binding letter of intent to potentially buy FTX. CZ, of course, being the big brains he is, said, you know what, I'm going to have to do our due diligence and look at all the numbers, make sure it makes sense. Of course. So SBF finally thought he could have some respite, breathe a breath of fresh air, and relax. But then, just a few days later, in November 2022, Binance backed out of the deal. That's because after seeing the books, CZ said, the issues are beyond our control or ability to help. And someone leaked the balance sheet. It was $9 billion in liabilities and only $900 million in liquid assets. Turns out FTX was insolvent. Users and employees alike who had poured their life savings into the exchange were fucked. Yet SBF tweeted, FTX is fine, the assets are fine. Sure they are. The only thing that was fine was the $16.4 million Bahamian real estate under his parents' names. SBF even went on an apology tour. He appeared on Good Morning America. When asked by Andrew Ross Sorkin whether FTX was run by a bunch of kids who are on Adderall having a sleepover party, SBF responded, look, I screwed up. I was the CEO of FTX. That means that I was responsible ultimately for asking great things, and I didn't. SBF was arrested in the Bahamas in December 2022, only a month after CZ backed out of the deal. He was extradited to the US that same month. He faced charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, campaign finance violations. The list goes on. And guess what? Members of his inner circle flipped faster than burgers. Caroline, Gary Wong, Nishad Singh, they all flipped. Caroline even said in her testimony, "Sam directed us to commit fraud. We lied to auditors, lenders, and the public." She admitted that they manipulated FTX's insurance fund numbers and used fake balance sheets to secure loans. SBF showed up to court and he pleaded not guilty. His defense: "I made mistakes I don't recall." The prosecutors came armed to the teeth with chat logs, emails, spreadsheets, and 3 of his closest allies testifying under oath against him. Even his parents got dragged in. Leaked emails showed them coordinating political donations and advising on PR spin. Glenn Ellison, Caroline's father, it turns out, once ran MIT's economics department and was Gary Gensler's boss. When he taught that blockchain course, yeah, I took it. You know, Gary Gensler, former head of the SEC and the CFTC. Anyway, SBF was convicted on all 7 counts and is now serving 25 years in a federal prison. But in the end, more than 1 million users lost literally everything. Institutions got burned bad. Retail got the worst of it. Shit rolls downhill, right? Investors sued the shit out of Tom Brady, Gisele Bündchen, Stephen Curry, and Larry David for promoting FTX during the Super Bowl. The FTX Arena in Miami got rebranded again. Crypto prices tanked, especially Sol, and it still hasn't been able to reach those heights again. By the way, SBF is still insisting he didn't mean to hurt anyone. His parents were also sued by FTX's new management for receiving over $32 million in cash and real estate. They're fighting it in court, claiming that all of it was a gift. So fair game, right? Tells you what kind of pieces of shit his parents are. SBF is now the face of everything wrong in crypto. This is what happens when you get too much money too fast and there's no oversight. It's given to a kid with no supervision, and it turns out that these kids are actually totally fucking incompetent. And after donating all that money to Democrats, he's been claiming that he had also donated to Republicans, but through gray channels, presumably because he didn't want to be associated with them. And yet here we are, with SBF basically begging Donald Trump to pardon him. Get the fuck out of here, man. Alright, that covers our episode for today. If you're into art, ordinals, tech, and crypto scandals like me, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, check out the episode on Bitboy Crypto. I'm your host, Valery Yoshi, and I'll catch you in the next one. You've been watching DJ Reports. Ciao.